Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Bullying Reported Please podcast. I am your hostess, E. Jones Blacksher. On this podcast, we go deep. We go deep in exploring bullying behavior. And that behavior can escalate in the schoolyard, in the church, in your own homes. So we'll be exploring real life stories, providing expert insights, and giving you practical strategies for identifying, addressing, and preventing that bullying behavior. It doesn't matter whether you're a parent, an educator, concerned citizen, a student. This podcast is for everyone, and we'll explore different aspects of bullying, from its root causes to its far-reaching effects. So stay tuned for some practical advice and just help us to empower you to speak up against bullying. On last week's episode, we explored sextortion. As you remember, sextortion is a form of blackmail in which someone threatens to distribute your private information and private as well as sensitive material if you don't provide them with images of a sexual nature, sexual favors, or even money. And it usually involves someone hacking into your computer or your smartphone to steal sexually explicit photos, videos, or messages, or coercing you into creating such content. Well, we always say this could never happen to me. Well, we would think that. But it's unfortunate that we have so many people out there that are criminal minded, that are not kind. They seek to harm you. They seek gain for whatever reasons, be it sexually, financially. And this thing is far reaching, as with cyberbullying. And sextortion, not necessarily a form of cyberbullying, but it has the same symptoms pretty much. But today, we're going to dive into another aspect of the cyberbullying and the sextortion, how it's all connected, actually. And we'll talk about how we got there. How did we get to that sextortion? What did you do? Or what did they do to coerce you, to fool you, to trick you into providing these images? Well, let's start with grooming. We're going to talk about grooming. And what grooming is a manipulative process where the predator, because that's in fact what it is, he's a predator, they gain the victim's trust, and typically it's a child, or it could be anybody that's vulnerable. It could be you, it could be me. We all are vulnerable at certain times in our lives, usually after a traumatic event, or you don't feel loved, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, these kind of things. So we all can be vulnerable at any given time. But the grooming is that process that their intent is for exploitation. And it's often sexual abuse. The process involves the abuser gradually building a relationship with the victim, their families, or even get into their community. They pretend to be your friend, your mentor, or even your protector. Man, they play on your emotions. And unfortunately, the word grooming has become synonymous with sexual abuse of children. It's often used broadly to describe the tactics abusers deploy to sexually exploit children. You would think that it happens gradually, but it can happen quickly. And it does happen quickly. And it can happen over time as well. It just, honestly, it depends on the victim. It's used, as I said earlier, to gain trust. And many grooming victims, if they ever report feeling the shame, guilt about complying with it, which definitely, more often than not, it stops them from disclosing what is happening to them. And many of them don't even know. These perpetrators, or we call slick, they are smooth operators, and you'll get taken in before you know it. It often involves grooming somebody, like as I said, it could take weeks, it could take months before turning into the blackmail. Blackmail, sexual sextortion. For example, let me give you an example. You might meet somebody online or on a dating site, because it happens on dating sites as well, social media, even gaming apps, who send you a friend request. Then they'll flirt with you, appear to be very friendly, and show some interest in starting a relationship with you. And they often use a fake identity. They do not disclose who they are, because that makes it harder to track once they are the crime is being committed. It'll make them hard to track because they use fake identities. Not just one, they can use many, many fake identities to befriend someone online. And some of the key elements of grooming include, of course, building the trust. They build the trust. They may give special attention to this person. They may gifts. And by the way, grooming can happen online, in person. It could be a coach. It could be someone you don't know, or it's right there in your own community. It could be somebody that you already trust, somebody you know. So they'll provide the special gifts, pay attention to you, do favors to make you feel really special and make you feel obligated to them. You don't want to hurt their feelings. You like the attention, and you don't want to do anything that would stop them from doing the nice things for you. Be aware of isolation. Predators often try to isolate their victim, creating situations where you all can be alone. And when they isolate, it's hard for you to want to even talk to anyone else, because they're providing you, remember, all that special attention, the gifts. And of course, the predator tests your boundaries. They start small with a little, innocent physical contact or inappropriate behavior, just to gauge your reaction, the victim's reaction, and then they gradually push the boundaries. They test your boundaries. Of course, the secrecy, thus the isolation. They want to isolate you from other people so they wouldn't even notice what's going on. And then they convince the victim to keep that so-called relationship, to keep it private, or what they're doing, they want to keep that a secret, often by making them feel guilty. They make the victim feel guilty, or make them ashamed. And then once the trust is established, that's when the exploitation began. And that exploitation can include sexual abuse, manipulation, or even coercion. And as I stated earlier, grooming, remember this, grooming can occur online or in person. And it could be perpetuated by someone the victim knows, such as a family member. It could even be a family member, a teacher, a coach, a peer. But know this, it is dangerous. It is very dangerous and can have lifelong, lasting effects on the victim's mental as well as their emotional well-being. Grooming can lead to sextortion. Again, that blackmail, where someone threatens to reveal the images, the videos, information about a victim unless they comply with certain demands, which often involves more explicit images, money, or even sexual favors. Grooming. Can be considered a precursor, a prelude to sextortion. So be very mindful. Be mindful of people that you don't know or people that you even know when they're pushing those boundaries. Be very careful. Pay attention. And that connection between grooming and sextortion, it's that pattern. It's the grooming process. Then they get the compromising material. And once they do, the exploitation. Threatening the victim, they're shamed, they're embarrassed, they're afraid. They are afraid. Would you want your parents, your relatives, your church members, your peers to see these explicit photos of you, or a video, or even worse? Know the signs. Know what is happening to you. Be aware. 99.9 times out of 10, if it feels wrong, it is. It is. Take the necessary precautions. Another means to obtaining images or videos is sexting. What is sexting? Well, sexting involves the exchange of sexually explicit messages, images, or videos. Often, though, it's often between consenting individuals. But these materials can be misused, especially if they fall in the wrong hands or if the relationship changes. Sexting. As an educator, when I was teaching high school, that was when I heard about the term sexting. And it happened, I heard about it more often than I would like to have about it happening in high school. It can happen with children as well. You're in a relationship, you're with somebody that you trust, boy-girl relationship or a romantic relationship, or you think it is anyway. And it can happen, again, more often than not. But what if you lose your phone? What if you lose your tablet? But once you share this, it's out of your control. You have no control over who see these images or what the other person is doing with it. And it definitely can lead to sextortion. And here's how it can. First of all, the trust is broken. People engage in sexting with someone that they trust, partner, close friend. But if that trust is broken, breakup, argument, it could even be malicious intent. The content shared during the sexting can be used against the sender. What if it's stolen? What if they decide they want to share it with the world? Take it to social media, and immediately, boom, it's gone. But now, remember, sharing some of these images can be criminal, even though they were exchanged willingly. By you sharing them can take on a criminal element. These images can be forwarded, copied, stolen, sometimes, again, without the sender's knowledge. And this can happen if the recipient shares the content with others, or if the content is stored on devices or online accounts that get hacked. That happens quite often, being hacked. The threats, the blackmail, once somebody got access to those materials, they can use it to threaten you, blackmail, whatever they want to do with it. And the extortionist may demand, again, here we go, more explicit content, money or other favors, and the threat. The emotional manipulation. The victim might feel pressured, ashamed, scared, making it difficult, of course, to even seek some help or report the situation. And the fear of being exposed can make the victim more vulnerable. It can make them more vulnerable to further exploitation. Sexting is not a good idea. It's not a good idea at all, because we never know where those images can end up. So to reduce the risk of it, it's important that the individual be very cautious about sharing explicit content, even with someone you trust. And you must understand that once that content is shared, you have no control over what that other person does with it. But even if it does happen, it's very important that you seek some help. And another form of a precursor to sextortion. You all heard of, have you, catfishing? You remember the show, Catfish? Well, catfishing itself is not necessarily a form of sextortion. However, it can be a method used to facilitate it. Catfishing, of course, involves somebody creating a fake identity online, often with the intention of deceiving others into a relationship or gaining their trust for ulterior motive. That fake identity, and they build the trust. They're fake relationships. You have some con artists out there that can make you believe just about anything that they want to. But remember, a lot of this information you already have on your profile. Where you live, your date of birth, all your posts and everything, your life events, traumatic events. A lot of us share way too much personal information. There are people out there that actually sit there and study profiles. They go through them and they see who's a target and who potential targets and so forth and so on. But they're catfishing. Fake identities. They establish relationships. I mean, just looking at the show, Catfish, how deep some of those relationships can get on one end. Usually the folks that are more vulnerable. They use those false identities, engage in an online relationship with the victim, building that trust again, creating that emotional connection. And the victim really believes that they're dealing with a real person and might become deeply invested in the relationship. And once trust is established, catfish might manipulate the victim into sharing some explicit videos, engaging in sexual conversations, and often using the guise of deepening their relationship. I want to get to know you better. What make you tick? I want to get to know what you like. What do you like to do? They build that trust. And the revealing the deception and threatening exposure, that's after they obtain the compromising material. The catfisher reveals their true identity, their true intentions, and threatens to expose the explicit content. As with the grooming, the precursor, the sexting, precursor, catfishing, precursor. The demands can go to the content, to money or other favors. And not to mention the emotional and psychological manipulation. The victim could feel trapped, ashamed, and the sheer fear alone of the consequences if the content is exposed, making them, of course, more vulnerable to further exploitation. In this way, catfishing can be a precursor to sextortion. The trust, building that trust, the deception, using the material gained, then blackmail. Each of these behaviors, the grooming, sexting, and catfishing, can play a role in the process that leads to sextortion, either individually or in a combination. I said individually or in a combination. So it's extremely important that individuals be aware of these risks associated with these kind of behaviors. Take the necessary precautions to protect yourself. If somebody you feel is being manipulated or threatened, You got to seek help. Report it, please. Report it, please. The shame, the guilt. You give in to these perpetrators, you give in, and it's not going to stop. You have to stop it. But let's take some preventive measures. You heard an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Let's take some preventive measures to not fall victim to these perpetrators. Again, we always say that could never happen to me. But at any given point, we become vulnerable. We can be vulnerable, and just like the door's cracked and somebody just push it in. So we have to be very mindful of these things and talk to our children. Talk to our children about these type of things. Internet safety, phone safety. Know your child, know their behavior. Next episode, we'll talk to our children, our victims, let them know what resources are out there available to them, what they need to do and not to do. And parents, please be understanding. We're going to talk to you too to help you navigate this process of sextortion, bullying. Ladies and gentlemen, I am E. Jones Blacksher, your hostess for the podcast, Bullying Reported. Please like, share, subscribe. Please pass this podcast on to someone, everyone, because we never know who is out there hurting and need to hear this information. Let's make this world a better place by positively changing lives, one attitude, one act of kindness, one nice gesture, one encouraging word, one hug, and one person at a time. Plant the seed and watch it grow. Let's eradicate bullying at all levels. Report it, please. Thank you, and you have a wonderful day.